It is a summer afternoon in 1054. Cardinal Humbert, a papal legate, walks into the massive sanctuary of the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. He isn't there to pray. Instead, he marches straight to the altar and drops a papal bull of excommunication right on top of it. Humbert turns and marches out. A deacon runs after him, begging him to take the document back, but Humbert refuses. As he steps into the street, he shakes the dust from his feet and declares, "Let God look and judge." In that moment, the physical bond of the Christian world breaks. There is a deep historical irony to this theatrical gesture. The pope who sent Humbert had died in Rome months earlier. Humbert's authority expired the moment the pope passed away, meaning the document he left on the altar was completely invalid. Humbert's bull was the terrifyingly quiet climax of a long sociological decay that had been rotting the foundations of the Church for centuries. The document's technical failure reveals the true nature of these fractures. Schisms aren't driven by paperwork or single incidents. They mark the final moment an organization's internal culture expires. To understand how this decay happens, we have to look at the strict categories used to define division. The most severe fracture is apostasy. This is the total repudiation of a shared faith. An apostate is someone who used to be an insider but has rejected the entire organization. Then there is heresy. Heresy requires a person to be an insider, someone who belongs to the group, but who obstinately denies or doubts a specific truth held by everyone else. Finally, there is schism. A schismatic might actually agree with you on every single point of doctrine, but they refuse to submit to the group's leadership, choosing a separation that destroys the social bonds of the community. While these definitions come from the Catholic Church, the mechanics behind them are universal. We see the same patterns tear apart labor unions, political parties, and modern tech companies. Because a schism ignores what people believe, it targets something more vulnerable. It weaponizes the concept of who belongs, creating a self-inflicted wound that destroys the social fabric of any human organization. The autopsy of any schism usually begins with language. In the early days of Christianity, the Roman Empire was a closely knit unit, but as linguistic unity crumbled, the West spoke almost exclusively Latin, while the East spoke Greek. As the two sides stopped meeting each other's writings, they lost their shared universe of discourse. Communication grew difficult, and mutual understanding began to crumble. This phenomenon appears in the lyrics of the rock band Tool. Their song Schism notes that organizations crumble when communication atrophies, suggesting that cold silence has a tendency to destroy compassion between members. Physical and administrative distance strips away the daily interactions that build empathy. Once communication stops, psychological isolation takes over, and former allies start to view each other as strangers. Once allies become strangers, minor administrative differences start to look like existential threats. Practices that were previously accepted or ignored are scrutinized as evidence of deep ideological corruption. By the 11th century, two competing models appeared: the Latin West's pyramid of papal supremacy and the East's pentarchy of 5 equal patriarchs. This suspicion bled into daily life, causing attacks over whether Eucharist bread should be leavened or unleavened. Baking methods do not break empires on their own, but when underlying trust dissolves, groups stop using operational rules to function. Instead, they wield those rules as weapons to invalidate the other side. This weaponization triggers the final stage of decay: communal closure. This describes the moment a group stops acting like an open fellowship and hardens into a rigid, defensive clan. This chart tracks striker participation in France. Following a massive strike peak in 1920, participation plummeted. In the descending phase of that wave, the unified labor movement fractured into rival socialist and communist sects. To maintain commitment as their numbers dwindled, these sects drew incredibly sharp boundaries. They created a strict dualism of us versus them and began purging internal members who showed the slightest leniency toward outside ideas. Leaders like Jules Dade personified this shift. He acted as the guardian of his group's dogma, treating any deviation with the same hostility a medieval inquisitor would reserve for a heretic. Communal closure finalizes the fracture. The group becomes so obsessed with defending its borders that protecting the ideological purity of the in-group becomes more important than the actual survival of the organization. The paperwork of 1054 didn't actually finalize the Great Schism. Friendly relations continued for generations. The true point of no return did not arrive until 1204, during the Fourth Crusade. Western Crusaders turned their weapons on their own allies. They sacked Constantinople, pillaged its treasures, and used force to impose Latin patriarchs. A schism reaches the point of no return when the administrative debate evaporates, replaced by outright hostility and the total destruction of mutual charity. The same autopsy is visible today. When political parties purge moderates or echo chambers silence outside voices, we are watching the exact same atrophy of communication play out in real time. Every organization is vulnerable to this decay. Without the continuous, deliberate effort to communicate and maintain goodwill, groups naturally slide toward closure. The choice is always either to actively build bridges or quietly accept the irreversible trap of communal closure.